Are you fascinated by deviant behavior? Do you draw inspiration from strange people doing strange things for strange reasons? If the answer is yes, I know a story you might like. Tale Foundry. Alright, before I start, let me level with you for a second. We all have our quirks. Yeah, most of us try to blend in, but come on. When we're alone, we all pick our noses or have conversations with our pets or spend hours scouring the internet for the perfect piece of obscure pornography. That's just life. And you know what? For all of our closet weirdness, the majority of us get along just fine. We keep the fetishes and the obsessions at home and talk about things like the weather or school. Safe stuff. But how would it feel if you couldn't just hide your peculiarities away? What would it be like to be haunted all the time by desires and compulsions that you have no control over? To live your life knowing that if you ever express yourself, if you ever seek out the satisfaction everyone else gets from acceptable behavior, you'll be mocked, ridiculed, maybe even thrown in jail? Wouldn't be an easy life. And for a couple of guys in Southport, England, that was the reality. Stephen Gothrop and Stephen Bain were both pretty religious blokes, so it's not a surprise that our story starts in a church. What was probably surprising, at least for Gothrop, was Bain's story. He explained to Gothrop that he'd been speaking with angels and that they tasked him with an important mission. That mission was to collect 10,000 socks. To Gothrop, it must have seemed like a godsend. He'd been harboring a secret foot fetish since primary school, and here was someone who not only shared his strange passion, but encouraged it. With Bain, he didn't have to be some weird guy who gets turned on by feet. He was part of a divine plan, something important and beautiful. So he accepted, and the two set up shop. Together they visited clubs and churches, schools and bars, always exploiting the same old story, that they were charity workers, purchasing used socks off people for the children. The winters are cold, after all, and someone's got to keep their little feet warm. Most people were glad to give up their socks, and even the skeptics didn't see the harm in trading away their old stockings for £5 a pair. The only truly suspicious part of this venture was the pictures. For each pair of socks they purchased, Bain and Gothrop snapped a photograph of the original owner. They said it was just to remember their kindness, and a surprising number of people actually bought that. What they didn't know was that the socks were being hoarded. Bain sealed them up in sandwich bags, each tagged with a snapshot of the owner, and stuffed them into storage bins. Gothrop, on the other hand, preferred to enjoy his socks in a less orderly fashion. When the police eventually raided his apartment, they found a wonderland of stinky polyester. One officer said that there were socks anywhere and everywhere, that they were all over the furniture, hanging from lampshades, and even in the microwave, frying pan, and cooker. It was like there had been an explosion inside a sock factory and socks had blown all over the place. But it was years before the two were actually arrested. Now, you might be wondering, arrested? For what? Is it against the law to collect socks? Are the police going to come and raid my dresser? Probably not. But by the end of their sock adventures, Bain and Gothrop had a lot more than old footwear to worry about. Their dedication to expanding the trove earned them a sort of reputation in the area. It's hard to solicit 10,000 socks from strangers in a small town without drawing a little curiosity. Soon enough, people were calling them the Southport Sockmen and gathering to see the pair in action. They quickly became a small-time phenomenon, and they reveled in their infamy. In fact, they got so bold that they started to invite people back to their apartments to buy socks in private. Like drug deals, but with socks. And hey, if you wanted to make an extra dime, the Sockmen would have been more than happy to cut you a deal. Just leave your shoes by the door. You won't need them for what comes next. Maybe they'd want to play with your toes or take pictures of your feet. Maybe they'd ask you to rest your feet on their faces for a while. Maybe they'd just take in the aroma of your sweaty kicks. Alright, so that stuff is a little weird by normal standards, but it's not wrong. You can't fault a man for buying a little quality time with some feet if that's what he's into. The trouble is that they weren't just out to satisfy their foot-filled fantasies. No, the Sockmen had some much darker motives. At least one of them did. It turns out Bain, the one who said he'd been talking to angels about socks, was not a gentle man. His relationship with Gothrop quickly devolved into an S&M master and slave situation. Bain was the sock master, and Gothrop the sock gimp. I'm not making that up, those are the actual titles they went by. The people that they invited to their apartments were often paid to dominate, humiliate, or physically harm Gothrope, who only sometimes enjoyed it. Often, he suffered the abuse against his will. To make things worse, a lot of their regular visitors were teenagers. The Sockmen were basically asking kids to prostitute their feet. Fortunately, before the situation could get any more out of hand, the two got themselves caught. It was a humble but lucky mistake. When they took their photos in for development, the technicians found something troubling. Mixed in with the thousands of pictures of people posing with their socks were a few stray images of the Sockmen covered in blood. The technicians, quite reasonably, went to the police. Soon after, the Sockmen were found guilty of inciting grievous bodily harm on each other, as well as conspiring to commit acts of gross indecency. They were put away for 1.5 years each, but you know what? They made the most of it, spending the majority of their time working in the prison laundry room and trading tobacco or cash for, you guessed it, used socks. There's even a rumor they got the socks off the security guards, but I guess we'll never know for sure. What I love about this story is that it's not very dramatic. It's not about a life or death situation. It's not deeply romantic. It's just some weird thing that happened, almost completely insignificant in the grand scheme of things, and yet, for the Sockmen and some of their victims, it was life-changing. Sometimes the best stories come from the most unlikely places. You just have to keep your eyes open. Anyway, that's all for now. I'll see you next time. If you want to find out more about the Sockmen, one of their victims is actually making a documentary, so you might want to check that out. Just click on the middle there. You can also subscribe if you want to hear more stories in the future, or click submit if you have a story you want us to share.